Be honest with yourself for a second. How many times this week did you skip the thing you knew would actually move the needle? Not because you didn't have time, but because you just didn't feel like it or made some excuse. I'll make that call tomorrow. I'll start when I'm more focused. I'm not in the right headspace right now. Meanwhile, someone with half your skill is lapping you. And it's driving you crazy because you know you should be ahead. Here's the difference. You're running your life or your business like a democracy, where your feelings get a vote. They shouldn't. In special operations, we didn't get to vote. At 2 a.m., a tear gas grenade would get thrown into our sleeping area during a training block, and we had 40 seconds to be outside in full gear. Then we'd run 8 kilometers, tear gas drool still coming out of our mouth at the start, and nobody asked if we were tired already. Nobody asked if we felt like it. You just did it. And that's a difference between people who can execute consistently and people who wait for perfect conditions. In this video, I'm breaking down 5 military habits from my time in Israeli Special Forces that will rewire how you execute. These aren't motivational tricks, they're operational systems that work whether you feel like it or not. My name is Itamar Marani. I'm an ex-Special Forces operative, undercover agent, Jiu-Jitsu Black Belt, and the author of Elite Performance, a blueprint for mindset and performance in business. I work with 7, 8, and 9-figure entrepreneurs to find clarity, get unstuck, and achieve their highest potential while winning big. If you appreciate me making this content for free, hit the like button below. It helps me know more of what to make. With that said, let's get into it. Number 1, execute regardless of how you feel. The tear gas story I just told you, that wasn't punishment. That was simply training. Nobody pulled us aside afterwards and said, good job pushing through. There was no debrief about mental toughness, no pat on the back, and no words of encouragement. You basically just did it and moved on to the next thing after honestly laughing at whichever teammate ate the most amount of shit at the time and got the most amount of gas on him. And that's the part most people today don't wrap their heads around. We've built a culture in the West that runs on affirmation. You're supposed to get a pep talk before you do hard things. Someone's supposed to tell you that you've got this. You need a support system, an accountability partner, a morning routine that puts you in the right state. And look, I'm not against support, but here's what that's created as well, the downside. A generation of people who feel like they need permission to execute. They're waiting for someone to validate that they're ready. They need to feel motivated before they start. They need the conditions to be just right. In the special ops world, nobody's coming to make you feel ready. There's no affirmation before a mission. You execute because it needs to get done. Your feelings about it are irrelevant to whether it actually needs to happen or not. And after enough of those experiences, something shifts. You stop asking yourself whether you feel like doing something. That question just becomes a non-factor. It's irrelevant. And there's only one question left. Does the thing need to get done? If yes, you do it, and that's it. Most entrepreneurs operate completely differently, not because they're doing something purposely wrong, but just because they were never taught the skill of not listening to their emotions. They treat their emotional state like a map of what's possible today. I'm not feeling creative, so I'll skip the marketing. I'm drained from that last call, so I'll push the proposal to tomorrow. I need to be in the right headspace for that conversation. All these things that they tell themselves that they believe that are reasonable. They think they're being strategic, managing their energy and optimizing for peak performance. In reality, they're negotiating with themselves. And every time you negotiate, you lose a little bit of ground. Think about what this looks like over a week. Monday, you push one task. Tuesday, you skip another because you're not in the zone. By Friday, you've moved maybe 2 things that actually mattered. Multiply that across a year and you start to see why people with half your ability are pulling ahead of you. They're not smarter, they just stopped asking for permission from their feelings. Here's what I learned. Your business doesn't check in on how you're feeling before it presents you with problems. Your competition isn't waiting until you're inspired. And opportunities don't pause because you had a rough night's sleep. Basically, nobody's coming to tap you on the shoulder and tell you that it's go time. The people who win have trained themselves to bypass that internal negotiation entirely. When they've identified something that needs to happen, the conversation ends. They just start moving. And this isn't about grinding yourself into the ground. It's about removing the decision from the equation, which oddly enough actually saves you a ton of wasted energy. You don't waste bandwidth deciding whether to execute or not. You've already decided. You're a doer, and now you're just doing things. That single shift from do I feel like it to does it need to get done will change more about your results than any strategy or tactic ever will. And this simplicity will actually give you more energy in life. Number 2, morning exercise builds operational momentum. In the special ops world, when you have a bunch of young, high testosterone soldiers, getting everyone to work out the first thing in the morning makes the whole team more focused and cohesive. There's a reason for this. You're burning off restless energy before it turns into bad decisions. So a story is that I had a client who was very high testosterone entrepreneur, like a really big dude, smart, and built a real business. But he actually kept causing chaos in his business, making impulsive decisions, starting unnecessary projects, just creating problems that didn't need to exist. When I asked him why he kept doing this, he laughed and half-jokingly said, "I don't know, man. I think I just need some crazy in my life." The problem wasn't his personality. It was his schedule. He was trying to do deep, focused work first thing in the morning while all that restless energy was still bouncing around in his system. So we switched it. Now he goes out and works out, surfs or rides his off-road dirt bike first thing and gets all that energy out before he sits down to work. Then he can do the calm and boring work that causes him to scale. The result was that he's working less hours, but his business almost tripled. Why? Because now he was focused on what actually moves the needle instead of looking for excitement in the wrong places. Most entrepreneurs treat exercise as something they'll get to do if they have time. That's backwards, and that's especially true for A-types. Exercise isn't a reward for finishing your work. In many cases, it's what actually makes your work effective. Start your day with something physical. Burn off the restless energy, then sit down with a clear head and do the work that actually matters. 3, real consequences create real accountability. In the civilian world, people love to talk about accountability, but here's the truth. Without consequences, there is no accountability. When I worked in the Israeli security agency, you had to pass a physical every quarter. 3 kilometers in under 13 minutes, 400 meters in under 69, and various strength tests. It didn't matter if you just flew back in country the night before. If you couldn't pass these tests, you got deactivated and you couldn't work anymore. Think about that. Your entire career, your identity, your income, all gone because you couldn't maintain a basic standard. That's real accountability. Most entrepreneurs have fake accountability. So they set goals, they miss them, they feel bad for a day, then they reset the same goal next week with 0 consequences. And they do the same for their teams. It's no wonder nothing changes, right? The entrepreneurs who scale fastest have built real consequences into their execution. They put money on the line and they make public commitments. They create situations where not executing actually costs them something meaningful. So look at your own goals. What happens if you miss them? If the answer is nothing, that's why you keep missing them. You need to create stakes, not fake stakes, real ones. Something that makes you follow through because the cost of not following through is going to be too high. Number 4, good soldiering. Protect your operating capacity. There's a concept in special operations called good soldiering. It sounds basic, but it separates the professionals from the amateurs. Good soldiering means it's your job not just to perform in the moment, but to set yourself up to perform at your best. So here's an example that sounds stupid until you actually think about it. Wearing your hat in training. If you're irresponsible and more on the fair-skinned side like myself, if you're out in the sun all day and you don't wear your hat, you're going to get sunburnt and then exhausted for the rest of the training block. That's poor performance that doesn't need to be there. So things like this were crucial as far as being a good soldier. We even had SOPs about what to eat before going out on a stealth mission. No beans, because if you're trying to sneak up on a target, you don't need a plate of beans making you all gassy. It's in actual unit protocol books. Now, it might sound ridiculous, but that's the level of detail that separates elite operatives from everyone else. You're protecting the asset, which is you, and getting yourself ready to be at your best. Most entrepreneurs are terrible at this. They stay up until 2 a.m. scrolling their phone, then wonder why they can't think clearly in important meetings. They skip meals and then crash during a negotiation. They ignore their health and then complain about low energy. Good soldiering in business means protecting your capacity to perform, going to bed early before a big presentation, eating so your blood sugar doesn't crash when you need to be sharp, and keeping your systems organized so you're not scrambling when an opportunity hits. You're not just trying to win. You're putting yourself in a position to be able to win. As the saying goes, everyone wants to win. Few are willing to do what winning requires. 5. Tabletop drills to program your responses. When I was stationed abroad as an undercover operations officer, every morning started the same way. Not with a cup of coffee, but with a mental drill. My commanding officer would throw scenarios at us. You're standing here, the crowd you're protecting is over there, a confirmed terrorist throws a backpack, which you're 100% certain is a bomb, at the crowd. What do you do? To this specific question, I answered without hesitation. I said, shoot to kill. Confirmed terrorist, confirmed attack, I shoot to kill. My officer, with a lot of wisdom, paused and looked at me and asked, Itamar, why are we here? Is it to kill terrorists? Slowly getting it, I said, no, it's to protect lives. He said, okay, so what's the most direct way to do that? I said, the most direct way to protect lives is to evacuate everyone first. The bomb is the threat, not the terrorist. So save lives first, then deal with the backpack. That drill really rewired how I thought. It forced me out of my default patterns and into clarity about what actually mattered. We'd run scenarios like this constantly. For example, 2 terrorists come in, one with a gun, one with a knife. Which one do you attack first? Because you've thought about it ahead of time, you know the gun is the bigger threat. You address that first, even if he's further away. In special operations, a moment of hesitation can be the difference between life and death. So you think through everything that could go wrong beforehand. You go in with a bank of responses ready in your head. In business, having your second, third, and fourth response ready can be the difference between closing a deal and losing it. Unfortunately, most entrepreneurs wing it. They walk into important conversations hoping things will go well instead of preparing for what will likely happen. Then, when they get objections or unexpected pushback, they freeze up and they underperform. The best performers run mental tabletop drills for what's important. Before big investor pitches, they anticipate the objections. Before difficult employee conversations, they think through all the likely reactions. And before big client presentations, they game out different scenarios. When you develop the habit of forecasting what people will likely do, you can make better decisions in real time and honestly look and act much smarter than you actually are. So there you have it. 5 military habits that separate people who execute from people who keep waiting for the perfect conditions. Execute regardless of how you feel. Use morning exercise to build operational momentum. Create real consequences for real accountability. Practice good soldiering to protect your capacity. And run tabletop drills to outsmart others. Now, these aren't complicated, but that's the point. Elite performance isn't necessarily about secret techniques nobody knows about. It's about doing the basics with a level of elite consistency that most people simply can't commit to. The entrepreneurs who scale fastest haven't found some magical hack. They just replaced civilian habits designed for comfort with operational habits designed for performance under pressure. They're able to execute whether they feel like it or not, when they need to, regardless of what's happening around them. And that's what makes them unstoppable and what can make you as well. So if you want to see how these habits translate into actually outworking everyone around you without burning out, I made a video breaking down exactly that. I'll link it right here.